We should be live. What's up, Twitch? I was just watching this. You can watch this reactions.
I promise, man. I promise. Put some stuff in the reaction com. Let's do a little yap yap. Do a little bit of desktop at the cap house. Go from there, man. I'm sorry if my energy seemed like a little low. It's just I haven't got no rest.
What's up, Twitch? So today is one of those days where I have to write code. So we're just going to figure out a way to, get some work done. Um, okay. Um, so I have like a few projects I'm working on, so I'm just going to choose one. And I know there's like a few projects I had started already, so those ones. But I think an interesting project I would like to work on is this one. And okay, 1 second. Let me change up. So there's this project that I have. It's sort of like a combination of like all of these ideas I've had in the past, and just like, let's see. I'd like to work on like a mobile app. I'd like to work on like a mobile app, and all mobile apps. I like mobile apps, so just like the thing is like the mobile apps I want to try and work on sort of a bit complex. I don't know if you guys know what I mean. NPM version. But I figured out a way to integrate AI without paying $20 to Cursor. So I can use these different models right here and not paying each for this. And that's thanks to Open Router and thanks to one guy who published a blog on Hacker News. Mm, yes, I have like these projects, quite a few projects actually, that I have that I think can sort of become one project. Let's see. Yes, I have like a bunch of projects and I want to try and bring them together into one project. So they're here, all of them, right? How do we bring these into one project? I could ask AI. But it doesn't necessarily have to be one project. It can be like, it can be micro frontends. And I think that's what I had as an idea when I started this project was um, have like a micro frontend architecture that would allow me to build different projects simultaneously. Yep. So let's first get some caffeine. Caffeine, caffeine. One thing I can tell you as a creator is that you have to be your number one fan. It doesn't matter if whatever you're creating is not being. Okay. This looks good actually. Damn. Okay. Yeah. So we have like a bunch of projects that are very messy and probably not learning. running. So we're trying to see how do we restructure these to be like look good, right? Uh, or to be deployable. And one way to do it is using micro frontends, and that's in terms of the client. In terms of the server, you would have to use, I don't think microservice is the right word, but like all of these projects would basically have their own sort of APIs, and yeah. So this is the kind of task that AI should be good at. So I set up Open Router, and I'm going to try and figure out a way to use it alongside different models, right? So you can try with Gemini, and the following project structure and give us an overview of how we can set up a way to run each with ease. You can have like, how do you do this? I have no idea how to do this. We can label them by type. You can label them by type and build IUI. You can build um, the UI run each with each. Using PNPM should allow us to use micro frontends. My goal is to find a free model that is better than Claude Mythos. Okay, let me rephrase that. My goal is to find a free model that is my goal is to build a free model that is better than Claude Mythos. Obviously, like when I'm using this, I face like a bunch of errors. This one, this one, it doesn't show path. Okay. So obviously, like some of these, no, I mean, this is capped. Open router is capped. By capped, I mean rate limited, which means at some point you're going to hit a token limit. And is it better than cursor? Um, no. One advantage cursor has is the ability to modify files. So this one doesn't allow you to modify files. Let's see this response. So this is how I was running the project initially. I don't have many dependencies, so npm prettier turbo TypeScript and still lost session. Um, so as I have done development, one thing I have learned is how a lot of like the less you're dealing with, the better the outcome. I don't know if that makes sense, right? Like the more tooling you add, extensions and all this stuff, the less productive you're going to become. And the less resources you use, the more productive you become. It's crazy how that works, right? One would think that if you want to become productive, you have to use more tools, more, but it's rarely the case. Okay, okay. Mm. I wouldn't be surprised if VS Code is being overwhelmed by the project you're trying to. Um, so let me show you something crazy, right? Do you see? So this is like probably 13 or 15 projects, right? And each of them is a JavaScript project, which means it holds node modules. Node modules can get to like can be very big in terms of size. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was like 13 plus 15 plus gigabytes. Is there a way you can measure this? This is like 2 GB. Let's collapse this. So a lot of those projects, mm, this is not the previous content. Okay, yeah. One thing you have to understand about not paying for a product is never complaining. You're using free stuff, so you know. Okay, let's see. Obviously, like you cannot expect free models to be as fast as um, paid models. So if you're using this, do not expect any results close to what Opus gives you, but it's still really cool, you know. Up to this point, this AI hasn't given us anything that we can use. And this font This is like a very weird font. We already have this. I feel like this is a bit slow. I don't know if it's just me. This is going to be very slow. Yep, but it's free, so can't complain. I'm interested in some like these. So just going to copy this here, and I'm going to call it manager.gsx, and I'm going to document every project here. I think we can end this. Uh, and we've got to find a model that allows us that's a bit faster, right? Let's see. See. Let's use this. Mm, which one am I looking at? I can't tell which one is which from this. This. I'm going to assume it's this. It might be the wrong one, but one hint I can give you about like AI and stuff. AI is mm, context, like not even context, but yeah, context. So the more context you give AI, the better the outcome, right? The output, the outcome, and um, this means that the fewer parameters a model has, the more descriptive the the context, right? The more descriptive or the more detailed the concept has to be. The context has to be. So, like, if I wanted to get better results from this, I would have to basically sort of add more context items. Ideally, I can add like every package.json that I have available here. Um, so what's new in the AI world? So I saw there's a project that Kapathy released, so we can take a look at that later on. No, 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 not this. Let's try this again. If it doesn't work, find another model that you can use. Okay, it ain't working, so let's find something else. Okay, I like this context. I like this context. I like that context. I'm going to remove this. I think the reason it's failing is because of the how many tokens we are trying to use by evaluating a project that is likely. Oh no, that's not why. Let's try this. Let's try this. No, 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 no. I'm not sure where which full minimax to be found. Is the provider? Trying to look up who's the provider of this. Oh, it's a Chinese company. Minimax 2.5. Let's see. Hello there, Chinese company. This is very, very interesting. And I feel like almost what whoever is going to bring the cost down for AI usage, but I don't mean like just down, but like drastically down is going to be what is this? Whoever is going to bring the cost of operations for models down, but not just like down. I'm talking Spotify cost like $3 per month, unlimited tokens. That's the goal. That's the goal. So, yeah, not $20, not so $3. It has to be $3 per month to use models at full capacity. And I feel like we are still a long way from there. Look at this. So every time I restart VS Code, I'm losing context. Continue to complete error. 9.5. Like this is like a completely different context. I am going to explore this one further. My Minimax. I realize one thing I like doing is I like teaching people, you know. So I realize I'm not doing that enough. So we have to start changing that. And so um and I doubt we're going to be very productive with coding, right? Because of the kind of models we're using. So I have like a few things I want to talk about. Like the first is managing managing or how to stay productive. How does one stay productive if they have like a lot of things to manage, right? And I think that's something that I struggle with, and I feel like there's like a lot of people that struggle with this as well. So I want to talk about that. Um, and there's like, I'm not a productivity expert in any way. I just have a few things that have worked for me, and I want to share them, right? So I used to do freelance work, and I was managing different projects. I was probably like 3 4 projects, right? And speaking of Chinese company, one company was a Chinese company, right? And it was we were building, if I remember correctly, I think we were building some sort of, I can't remember exactly the project. It was like 6 years ago. And was it I think it was like a Slack clone. Yeah, it was kind of like a Slack clone. And um I was working on that project and working on a few others, but that was like the most intensive project, right? So I simply could not manage or juggle four projects at once. So I reached a point where I gave up or sort of burned out. And since then, I've learned when to slow down, when to speed up, when to what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and I want to share this, and hopefully it can be helpful to someone out there. So we're going to call this managing work, um, life, death. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Uh, Managing work, life, and um, school, kids. I don't have any. Do I? Yeah. So you're going to call this something like this, and um, so you're going to call it this. But this is basically how to deal with, like, if you have like a lot of things on your plate that are demanding your attention and you're trying to focus, obviously you're going to struggle, right? Let's limit it to work, life, school, right? Managing work, life, school, right? So how do you do this? And I am no expert whatsoever, so whatever I tell you, what I'm good at is I'm really good at experimenting and finding what works for me and what doesn't work, right? So we're going to call this work, we're going to call this school, and you're going to call this life, right? This is life, this is work, this is school, right? So you have work, you have life, and you have school. But let's order these by like, let's order these by a proper order, right? By proper order, I mean first there was life, then there was school, and then there was work. Right? So I'm going to try and give you like a framework you can use to sort of try and manage this, right? So each in this bucket is, you can think of it as maybe like a responsibility, right? And in terms of work, your responsibility can be, um, let's go in luck here. In terms of work, your responsibility can be like um, clocking in, um, start time. I'm guessing there's like break time. I'm guessing there's like clock out time. We're just going to identify as many. I'm guessing there's tasks or work items, and there's a crash at work. Mm, okay, let's remove this. You have like all of these items, right? So this is like, you have all of these items, and you might ask, well, what makes you qualified to talk about this? Well, I've been, maybe not like school and work, but this is what you have, right? Mm. So you have, so each bracket is going to require like, so here we have wake up, we have sleep, we have we have exercise, we have we have, social media. As much as you'd like to avoid social media, it's now integrated in life, social media or internet. You have padding, you have family, we have pet or dog. So we have like all of these things, right? And here under school we have exams, we have, yeah, classes, yeah, yeah. What else? What else? what else do we have in school? It's like start time, lunch end time, and yeah, schedule, right? Right. So I'm going to assume this is like there's probably more items here, and the reason I ordered it this way is because it is actually supposed to be this way. So first there's life, and then there's school, and then there's work. So if you're trying to manage different aspects of your life and they are both complex, I mean important, they're all important, because each sort of is going to lead somewhere along your is going to lead you somewhere. So this is basically how I think you do it, right? First, you identify the one activity that is going to make each day work as seamless as possible, be as seamless as possible, right? So one activity, and so one activity, right? So what is the one thing, let's say our day is structured like this, what is the one thing that we can eliminate or prioritize to make everything else feel good, right? I mean, everything else work smoothly. So, well, there's sleep, there's wake up, there's, well, life, there's, yeah. So these are what I call primary activities. And this also means that whatever happens, you cannot fall off on each of these, right? So my suggestion would be set a limit, like let's say how many hours do you want to sleep per day. I will test as many times as possible. So um from like 6 hours to like 8 hours, right? So this can be like the time that you are going to sleep, and then for wake up it can be whatever time works for you. The earlier the better. And for exercise, so I'm guessing if you have like your life like this, there might be a scenario where you have like work gym or school gym and you have to use that, right? So exercise is also going to go with convenience. Convenience. So if you have like a home gym, or if you do home workouts, if you do, but convenience and consistency. So convenience and consistency when it comes to exercise, right? So wake up, the earlier the better. So these are these are like these should be your primary activities, right? Because these are the driver of everything else, right? And that's why you have like uh that's why you can have bad days, like if you're doing a lot of partying, and um you're going to have like crazy bad days, right? And I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it's going to affect you in some way, right? And you can do it, but just come up with your own way to recover, right? And then the same applies to social media. So you can label these two types, and one type would be so there's like, you can call them drivers, right? Let's call these drivers, and they are drivers of your happiness, productivity, relationships, whatever, right? So sleep is a driver of productivity, and um, same with wake up, but not only productivity, like everything else is going to be driven by how good you've slept. And the same applies to wake up, exercise, and then there is like social media and partying and family and pet. So family and pet are obviously very important, but there's things you can eliminate from your life and be completely okay, right? There's partying, and then there's social media. So you can have secondary activities, right? So secondary activities are what activities can never or are likely to impact your life in a wrong way. So I can say maybe or if they fail, are going to impact your life in the wrong way. So you can think of CAT and exams, because you, so if you fail, that's not going to be good, right? So CAT and exams, and you can think of like um what else so, and then attending classes, and then there's work, clocking, right? So there's like, these are now, so you don't want to miss work, you don't want to fail cards and exams, um you don't want to miss classes, and then you also have to clock in at work, and that is if your work requires you to be physical, right? So this assumption assumes your work has to be physical, and if it's not physical, let's say if it's remote, um you you're going to do login. So obviously there's like less friction here compared to here. So this has less friction, this has more friction, which means you should factor in the friction that comes with each of these, right? So by friction I mean commute. By friction I mean mm, by friction I mean like this is simply going to be there's like commute. By commute there's commute is enough. This is enough to waste a huge chunk of your energy, right? So commute, this is already going to feel heavy, right? So again, so think of your activities primary and then secondary, and there is, how do we call these now, these other activities? mm, we we're going to come up with the third category of activities, and we're going to call these we're going to call them I'm going to call them so primary, secondary, and I want to find a category of like these important yet, let's do other important activities, right? We will label it others for now, right? And this can be phone calls or conversations, family, pet, then crush, right? So I'm going to call these like, these are like other activities, right? And let's use GF, DM to GF, right? So these are like the other activities. So let's, so it helps having like different sections, and I've tried, so these are like different activities that you have. So there's life, there's school, there's work. So you have like these three, but then it can also mean that you have different goals. Like you might want to have, you might, I don't know what you do with your day, but it is important to just know like these, like there's the primary drivers, there's secondary drivers, and then there's others, right? So what I mean by primary drivers is if you sleep 1 hour, there's a very high chance that you might fail an exam, right? That's just because your brain needs some sleep, and if you don't get sleep, it's just not going to operate at its most efficient. It's not going to be at 100%, let's just say. And if wake up time affects clocking in, exercise affects energy that you're going to have within the day. And um, one thing I have to tell you is you have to be very flexible. So there's days you're not going to exercise, right? these days you're not going to be um able to exercise, but then can you still get in like a very quick 2 3 minutes exercise? Let's say you have like um you are doing a hackathon and it's like 48 hours, right? That's just my context, but let me bring it to your context. Let's say you spend the whole last night partying and you have to show up in class the next day. Can you take a cold shower and then do 20 push-ups? It's like you have to be flexible with how you optimize your days. Again, there's not going to ever be one shoe fits all. There's going to be like, okay, I want to get this done, and I need to understand how I best operate, right? Or how my body functions. So, and um, a lot of the time, if you get primary activities right, everything else sort of kind of falls in place. And if you get them wrong, everything else is also going um to be wrong. Yeah. To yeah. So that's basically, so think of it like you can call these um you can call these yeah. So think of like focusing on primary activities and understand that if you are in scenarios where you have deadlines or you are forced to put in more hours, which is going to be frequent, you still have to incorporate your primary activities in some way, right? Um, yeah. So your days are not always going to be the same. It's never going to happen. I mean, you can try, but there's going to be inconveniences. Friends are going to call you to show up to their the wedding. You're going to get drunk, and um, the trick is to find a way to incorporate primary activities that makes you the person who gets to still remain efficient. Yep. So I think that's like what I would say, and what I would say, especially one thing we haven't talked about is how long these secondary activities here take. So if you have CAD and exams, obviously there's going to be pressure. Pressure is going to, yeah. So if you have like these CAD and exams, there's going to be probably going to be pressured, and you need to recognize these moments like pressure. And then if you have classes, there's going to be, if you have classes, what's going to be there, like, mhm. But this is not what I wanted to talk about more, because I am not, I want to talk more about this specific part because it's what I have experience with, right? Um, a lot of remote work comes down to, a lot of remote work is going to come down to, let me put this here. just went changed everything. Okay. I want to talk about remote work, right? Because I have quite a lot of experience with remote work. The first the first thing you have to know about remote work is the most important part of a remote team is, how do I put this? Is show up. Show up. And it's not only remote work, like it's any work. It's show up, but that's the first. The second is find your, how do I frame this? Find your, find your voice. So this is the second important point. Or the third is focus. The fourth is the fourth is so focus and show up, find your voice, focus and deliver. So these are the most important, the most important factors of remote work. Um um Here I'm not talking from experience. Like, I'm not a huge party goer. I don't have a pet. Um, um, so there's like a lot of these things. I don't do cards or exams. So there's like a lot of these where I can talk from experience. But I've been there, but I'm not there anymore. But I want to talk about this because I have been here a lot more. So the most important part of remote work, the first one is showing up. So you have to show up. The second one is find your voice. The third one is focus. The fourth is deliver. We're going to call these, mm, we're going to call these, I'm trying to find an easy name for this to make it easy for you to understand. What's an easy name? Let's find an easy name for this. SFFT. Um, anyway, I don't have an easy name for this. So, what does each of these mean, right? Um, what does each of these mean, right? And you can think of each item as a way to. So let's see. So show up means. So this means open your laptop, ensure it's connected to the Wi-Fi or internet, ensure. Show up really means laptop, internet, coffee, context. No, I want to use context is task. Task of the day, right? So laptop, internet, task of the day. So by showing up, what I mean is, um, if you get a text and you were working on a certain document and then someone texts you is like, hey, can I get a response about this, and can you be able to actually answer? And yep, so that is if you don't have a laptop, if you don't have internet, if you don't know your task of the day, um let's just do task, laptop, internet, task, right? And find your voice means how do you communicate, right? How do you communicate? And then focus means sit down. Deliver means deliver means um launch. It means launch means showcase. So I'm trying to find words that relate to this to give you like a context so that it will be easy to remember, right? So but just focus doesn't necessarily mean sit down, but in the context of remote work, it's going to require you to sit down and manage your I don't like using the word manage your energy because it's kind of corny, right? But it is what it really is. Like you need to sit down for long hours to actually build something and get it done. Like this is the most important part. If you don't have a way that you can sit down for 3 to many hours in a day. Days you're not going to be able to get this done, right? And um, think of it like, let's say you have a task, and your task is to write a document that is going to help a company, a fintech company, or an e-commerce company. Let's say you have to write product descriptions for an e-commerce company. Let's say that's your task, right? If that's your task, my guess is there's like tens or hundreds of products, and there's no way you're going to get that done unless you can actually sit down and get to the task, and try and get to do it. And focus is trained, which means it can come easy to some, harder to others, but you just have to find your own lane and your best way to actually achieve this. So focus, you have to actually focus and finding your voice. How do you communicate? A lot of people think for you to communicate you have to be um to, you, you need to find your voice. By this what I mean is, how best can you share a message and ensure it doesn't get lost in context? um how do you say something so clear 90% of the people would understand it? There's different means of communicating, and you can think of writing, you can think of art, you can think of music, um, you can think of you need to find a way to communicate if you are a remote worker, like, and you need to find, like, how do you best communicate? How do you communicate your frustration? How do you communicate your progress? How do you communicate? So a lot of remote work comes down to this, because if you don't communicate, uh the the person who's like on the other side of, like, the other side of, let's say you're working with someone who's in South America, like, this person surely has no idea what you're trying to, um, or your state of life, or what you're trying to achieve. So this person literally cannot put themselves in your shoe, and they do not understand your frustration, or your internet troubles, or your security, your country instability, or so there's a lot of these things that you need to think through, and um, have a way to communicate properly. I usually think I'm going to go live for a long time, and then I find myself wanting to end early, but I guess it's not early because it's like, yeah. But that's basically it. Find your voice, find a way to communicate. Is it text? Is it speaking? Is it, yeah? And then focus, sit down, stare at the task, get it done. Get it done one by one. This is like the best way I can explain focus. It's like sit down, stare at the task, get it done one by one. Yeah. So this is the best way I can explain focus. It's just sitting down, looking at what you have to get done, and getting it done, because there's no other way past this specific part. Sit down, look at what you have to get done, and get it done. And sometimes it's not going to mean that you have to actually sit down. Sometimes it's going to mean that you have to like um you can focus on a goal, you can focus on um yeah, so it's really going to depend. And then this is very important. You need to showcase, because you need you need people to know that you have to advocate for yourself. If you don't, and this is applies to finding your voice as well, right? So if you find your best way to express yourself, like how do you best express yourself? How do you express your frustration? How do you express um your almost anything, right? So if you find the best way to do this, chances are you're going to have less of a hard time showcasing, because you need to showcase for you to for people to understand. Again, this is like remote, like we are not in the same room. So how do you make yourself stand out to a point where I can't ignore what you've done? So it, but overall it's like how do you ensure that um the people that you work with understand the value you've created? So these are the these are the important part of remote work. Show up, find your voice, focus, deliver, and not just deliver but showcase. Like you need to showcase what is it that you're working on. And because like I'm not in the room with you, like I am probably somewhere else. And so how do you make sure that whatever you've done is very clear and your value is seen? Because if you miss this part, you don't lose right away. You're going to eventually lose, because no one is going to see what you have done. So what have you done? What was the outcome of your focus? And find your voice and showcase. So these are like the four important aspects of a remote team, or a remote worker, or working remotely. And I'm talking from experience, because I have done this for like I have worked remotely for like 7 or so years. So I understand what it means. Like this is basically it. This is what it takes to work remotely. And I think that's the live stream for today. To end on a good note, I promised a reaction to Kapati's video, so Kapati's model, so let's just do a quick reaction and then we can call it a stream. YouTube is kind of like my Google, so let's see. So it's called Dr. Research, and I wanted to react to this. This. Okay, Let's see if we find it on GitHub.